Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Crypto Mining Show, your one-stop shop for all cryptocurrency news from the perspective of a cryptocurrency miner. Yes, we're going to be diving back into getting one episode out a week, hopefully on Sundays, and catching everybody up on the latest crypto mining news. Of course, primarily focused on mining aspect of cryptocurrency, and that will revolve around anything from any proof of work coins like Bitcoin all the way down to Meow Coin. Today, we're going to be covering, of course, the intro to the next bull run, according to some. We'll discuss on my thoughts and opinions on that as Bitcoin jumps over $30,000 for the first time since August. So that's been a welcome thing happening right now. We're also going to be talking about the US officials saying they're worried about Chinese-owned Bitcoin mines in the United States, as well as the US going ahead and shutting down shipments of the RTX 4090 to China. So a bit of a tech war going on there that we're going to be discussing, as well as the Silk Road hacker information. Basically 70 million worth of Bitcoin showed to the feds on his laptop before being arrested, and Bitcoin Lightning Network facing some issues as developer exits over security concerns. We're going to cover all of that, and of course new miner releases from SRB Miner, Rainbow Miner, BZ Miner, and of course new firmware from Epic Blockchain for S19s, the 95 terahash or the old S19s, bringing up, of course, the possibility of better efficiency on those. I'll be going over some of the things I've been doing at my farm this week as well, and give you guys the full update and tour. I am wearing a new t-shirt, Kilowatt Killers. This is my design that I just created. It's death metal logo for those that are just listening. You can check it out at shop.sonofatech.com or down below the video. And it's I thought it was cool. So anyways, there you go. If you want to pick one up to help support the channel, that would be awesome. Other ways you can help support the channel, of course, is hitting the like button, the comment button later on down the line, commenting in live chat, and of course, sharing out the live stream if you find this information helpful. Let's go ahead and get into it after a word from today's sponsor. Today's sponsor is BT Miners. BT Miners has been a longtime sponsor of the channel and a proven reliable source for ASIC miners. If you're looking to purchase ASIC hardware from Bitcoin to Dogecoin miners, they are available for purchase on bt-miners.com. BT Miners is a trusted source by both ASICminervalue.com and CryptoMiner.com. Follow the affiliate link in the description and tell them SOT sent you to support the channel. And welcome back. So let's hop into the first thing. Bitcoin this week went over 30K. In fact, it kind of bounced up and down quite a few times as there were some false reports, of course, earlier that Bitcoin ETFs were approved. Of course, we found out later on down the line that that wasn't necessarily true, and that was a misreport, and it caused huge spikes on on Bitcoin. This brings up the question of, if an ETF is approved prior to the halving, could we see an early start to the Bitcoin bull run? And this, or the crypto bull run in general, right? And this is something that's been brought up quite a few different times. What breaks Bitcoin out of the traditional cycle? For those that are unaware, Bitcoin's been on a 4-year cycle since its inception. This cycle basically is based around the halving of Bitcoin, and the next halving is in April of 2024. Typically what you'll see is the halving take place and accumulations start to build up for the next 6 months. About 6 to 9 months after the halving happens, what you see is a huge spike in the price of Bitcoin, which is caused by basically fear of missing out by retail investors that don't understand the cycle of Bitcoin. The actual pricing of Bitcoin is most of the time correlated, to the cost to mint Bitcoin. And the reason the halving affects this is because the halving is basically cutting the rewards miners get from transactions on the blockchain or solving a block in half. So this next time, for example, it's going to go from 6 Bitcoin to about 3 Bitcoin or 3.25, somewhere around there. So what you see, of course, is that price get go up due to that. And then people see the price of Bitcoin go up. They think that Bitcoin's going to go up forever, and they invest, and it goes way up into the ether, to the moon, right? Like we saw previously. And what happens eventually is people realize that this is more what the actual value of Bitcoin is, and it comes back down to cost to mint, and sometimes a little bit below that. And this is basically what we've seen since the inception of Bitcoin, this 4-year cycle play out. So from my perspective, I always plan around the 4-year cycle. I don't necessarily plan around other things outside of this, but it is important to bring up the fact that with the ETF coming into play, what we would see is a bunch of investors that are not familiar with the 4-year cycle, which could cause some FOMO into Bitcoin. And then what would be really interesting, of course, is if we see these approved and the price of Bitcoin goes up before the halving, we could see kind of a culmination of events that cause some sort of up period that lasts a lot longer than it traditionally has, which would be very awesome considering the fact that we've seen a downturn that's lasted quite a bit longer than it typically does. So let me know what you guys think in the comment section and the live stream below. There is an article here covering, of course, the jump over 30K referencing on CoinDesk, the ETF hopes. And it says Bitcoin forks led alternative token gains in the past 24 hours, outpacing major tokens. Bitcoin crossed the $30,000 mark during the morning hours on Friday, extending its weekly gains to over 11% as bullish sentiments around a possible spot Bitcoin exchange traded fund, ETF for short, approval in the US gained momentum. Tokens formed by the forking of Bitcoin, Bitcoin Cash, and Bitcoin SV jumped as much as 26% to lead gains among alternative tokens is in a sign of possible irrational exuberance, which is what I would attribute this to, right? Irrational exuberance. And the thing is everybody that's been participating, I think, within cryptocurrency for a long time is very aware of the 4-year cycle. You kind of see this start to happen. And I think it's a hint of what happens when adoption of cryptocurrency goes beyond the people that are educated on cryptocurrency. We saw a huge adoption rate, of course, surrounding NFTs, etc., in the last bull run that brought a lot of people that are not traditionally in the crypto space into crypto. And a lot of them felt like they got burned. There were a lot of scams that happened in that particular case, and it basically put a sour taste in a lot of people's mouths. But we did see kind of what happens when normies get into cryptocurrency. And I think we see, like, obviously this irrationality of people that want to get into cryptocurrency that will drive the price up without actually understanding the dynamics of the actual what the price is driven by. I mean, we see this a lot of times across the board, especially in shit coins or in altcoins, right? Where people don't understand the cost to mint and they drive the price of these tokens that are worthless, or even projects that are not worth as much, to an extreme high. So there is always this kind of balance game where, like, there is something to be said for jumping on a train early, even if it's not worth a lot, just so that you can make a lot of money off of it. It's kind of like that Ponzi scheme aspect of it, or that pyramid scheme aspect of cryptocurrency that you can, make money off of, ironically, right? And it's kind of funny like that. Earlier this week, 4 House Financial Services Committee members urged the SEC to listen to the courts and give up efforts to block Bitcoin ETFs from regulatory approval in a letter to SEC Chair Gary Gensler. Elsewhere, hopes of the Grayscale Bitcoin Trust being converted into an ETF riled up some traders. GBTC is one of the largest institutional Bitcoin holdings, and Grayscale is among several other asset managers who have applied for a Bitcoin spot ETF. Other major firms in the race include BlackRock, of course, Fidelity, and WisdomTree. Meanwhile, traders said a ruling in Grayscale's favor could tilt overall sentiment bullish and even set the bedrock for a broader market climb. Quote, Bitcoin has also been encouraged by possible ETF approval and an increasing number of ETF submissions by leading companies, shared Lucy Hugh, senior trader at Met Alpha, in a message early Friday. Quote, the SEC opted for a no appeal on Grayscale's ruling, and as the deadline for Bitcoin spot ETF applications from institutions such as BlackRock looms closer, the market's confidence in ETF approval has increased, end quote. With the Bitcoin ETF approval and halving event in April, the crypto market could kickstart a very robust bull market, Hugh added. And this is the question that I have. If you have an ETF approval here by the end of the year or even early into 2024 that causes an uptick in the price of Bitcoin in general, that will raise all ships in the rest of the crypto market, of course. And then that would flow into the natural cycle of Bitcoin going up after the halving in April. We could see basically an unprecedented bull run that starts earlier, meaning I could definitely see a bull run that starts basically in April at the halving of Bitcoin, as opposed to further into the cycle, like the 6 to 9 months after the halving that we typically see, because usually the accumulation period starts after the halving, right? So you would see April happen, accumulation period for the next 6 to 9 months, and then the euphoria as other outside retail investors come into Bitcoin once again in fears of missing out on the profitability of investing in Bitcoin. But if that starts earlier with accumulation being kickstarted by the ETF, I do think that we could see basically a breakout of the traditional cycle of Bitcoin. Once again, is this something that you could see happening? Let me know in the comment section. That would obviously be awesome, because that would basically, it could be bad or good, right? So let me put it this way. From my perspective in general, my entire plan is to continue to accumulate just as I would through the typical cycle, meaning my accumulation period would be cut short. So I wouldn't have as much of a boost, right? So for example, miners are at an all-time low right now. If we go to the ASIC hash rate index, right, we can get these old S19s for as cheap as they've ever been, right? Like it's absolutely insane. We are seeing $5 per terahash prices for 38 to 68 joules per terahash. And that is cheap as dirt, which means right now I have the best opportunity to accumulate as much hardware as possible in the Bitcoin mining space of things and be pretty certain that that will go back up, right? Just because we've seen this, like I said, every 4 years. So my accumulation period gets cut short, unfortunately. But on the flip side of that, of course, it does put me in a position where, combined with, of course, the crypto YouTube channel and the mining, etc., I could have quite a bit of good profitability starting earlier, which is definitely welcome. I just wouldn't have as much equipment and as much power deployed as I would prefer, or as I have planned out for the next cycle. So those are kind of the pros and cons of this starting earlier. I'd like to hear your thoughts and opinions too. Would you like this to start earlier, or would you like it to start later? Do you feel like you've accumulated enough to be ready for the next bull run in cryptocurrency, or do you feel like you still really want to accumulate quite a bit more? And that's definitely like kind of the pros and cons surrounding it. There is still plenty of FUD going around though, surrounding cryptocurrency in general. What is interesting is, in the past, I've always talked about really Bitcoin becoming a battle between nations, right? It's a battle between banks, but then it becomes a battle between nations. And I think we are starting to see this kind of battle start to play out surrounding Silicon primarily, right? Because it's not so much surrounding Bitcoin specifically, but because of the infrastructure surrounding Bitcoin, it's starting to be a security concern at a national level. And we can see that here with US officials saying they're worried a Chinese-owned Bitcoin mine in Wyoming will pose a national security threat. This is really interesting. Pentagon officials monitoring a Bitcoin operation in Wyoming that sits across from a Microsoft data center and a nearby military base are worried that owners' ties to China could pose a national security threat, per the New York Times. Microsoft believed the location could allow the Chinese government to, quote, pursue full spectrum intelligence collections operations, end quote, directed at the data center and the Francis E. Warren Air Force Base, which houses ICBMs. The crypto mining operation first came under the U.S. government's purview after a team at Microsoft submitted a report to the Committee on Foreign Investment in August 2022. The team believed the mining operation had the potential to collect information from the data center, which supports the operational needs of the Pentagon, the Times reported. Quote, Microsoft has no direct indications of malicious activities by the entity, end quote, Microsoft wrote, per the Times. However, pending further discovery, we suggest the possibility that the computing power of an industrial level crypto mining operation, along with the presence of an unidentified number of Chinese nationals in direct proximity to Microsoft's data center and one of 3 strategic missile bases in the US, provides significant threat vectors. Now, here's the question that I have, because if we are talking about cryptocurrency mining from the perspective of Bitcoin, the compute power doesn't seem to be that much of a threat, in my humble opinion, because you have application-specific integrated circuits. I think there would be more of a threat in general, right, if we had more general compute, meaning CPU, GPU, that sort of thing. So if you had a GPU mining farm or a significant amount there, then I would definitely be a little bit more concerned surrounding the type of equipment. But of course, you know, with that close proximity, I'm not sure exactly what they are alluding to here. I mean, other than, of course, they're sharing the same back ends, right, that sort of thing. So there could be attack vectors from there, less secure as far as the locality goes there, because they're probably running off the same backbone, essentially, that sort of thing. What do you guys think? Is there a threat there? I think the biggest threat, of course, is utilizing that power for the profits of the Chinese government, right? And it's a really interesting concept here, but we do know that a lot of companies within China don't act outside of government rulings, meaning that the Chinese government is fully aware and approves every movement that specific companies within China make because of the way that the government is basically formed. And so if there was approval by that company to operate within the US, on the flip side, still, of course, all of the bans for Bitcoin mining in China, what is the strategic play from that perspective? Is it basically gain wealth through mining Bitcoin while utilizing, of course, power of basically a competitor, a competing nation like the United States? Does that mean that you're basically able to utilize power or a grid from a different nation state, but then profit off of it? How much can the US really regulate that? And what are the other attack vectors here? It says in 2021, China banned the resource-intensive practice of Bitcoin mining, which is what we just discussed. Businesses in the cryptocurrency market scrambled to establish themselves in other countries, including the US. The Times identified mines in 12 states that were owned by Chinese nationals. Per the outlet, some had ties to the Chinese government, some did not, and others could not be easily traced. Of course, I don't think that some did not. I think pretty much every company that has ties to the Chinese government, if they're from China, almost 100% guaranteed. The Cheyenne, Wyoming Center was one such mine per the Times. The Times reported that the mining operation is linked to 5 different companies, with one company, BitOrigin Limited, previously registered as a pork processing company in the Cayman Islands. Li Jingming, I think I said that correct, the president of BitOrigin Limited, said that the Microsoft data center or the nearby military base had nothing to do with why the area was chosen. Instead, the mine was placed there because a local utility company agreed to work with BitOrigin, which totally makes sense. Quote, even though we are a Microsoft neighbor and a couple of miles from the base, without power is nothing. The business cannot succeed, he told the Times. Officials who spoke with the Times cited concerns that the mines, which use an immense amount of electricity in their operations, would be used to purposefully overwhelm electrical grids to cause planned blackouts and complete other cyber attacks. So I guess this is the angle that they're taking, is that because of the amount of power that a Bitcoin mine utilizes, they could potentially suck up a bunch of the power and shut down the grid. If you are close to a military base as well as close to the Microsoft data center, I would assume the Microsoft data center at this point is utilizing a lot more power than, of course, this Chinese mining farm, just, based off of the amount of power that Azure cloud is pushing out at this point. I would assume that they're way above what a Bitcoin mining farm is. That seems like a very tough practice to, if you shut it down, right, you're kind of hurting yourself as far as you're not maintaining profitability. I guess there would be some sort of subsidizing act by the Chinese government to help do that. I don't see that being a big deal. Now, cyber attacks, as far as being able to once again leverage that backbone, or the same backbone that Base utilizes as well as Microsoft, and be able to somehow do some sort of attack via compute power, possibly. But if it is just a Bitcoin mining farm, that compute power is not going to translate over to anything. Like even a brute force attack wouldn't be something that a Bitcoin mining ASIC is going to be capable of, at least, to my knowledge, because we would have to point out that Bitmain does manufacture these things. Is there some sort of backdoor, some sort of other purpose for these miners? Well, at that point, we're all in trouble, and we should have remained ASIC resistant, right? U.S. officials have expressed growing concern that the Chinese government is attempting to target and disrupt U.S. military operations. In July, the Times reported military officials identified Chinese malware that could disrupt power, water, and communications to military bases. An interesting article. I do think that overall there will be a fight for power and control over cryptocurrency. Obviously, volume control over Bitcoin will be a big play here. And I think everybody, obviously BlackRock's already seeing this happen. I think we even saw some people with BlackRock saying that they would have something like ridiculous, like $31 million Bitcoin or some craziness after ETFs are deployed. I don't think I necessarily agree with that. I still don't understand BlackRock's strategy here, other than the fact that I think that BlackRock sees that Bitcoin's here to stay, and the more Bitcoin you control, probably the more industry you will control in the future, right? The more, basically the more powerful you'll be economically. And that will be, a factor. That does bring up the fact, of course, with me, does Bitcoin really solve any of the problems that we're trying to solve if someone buys up a majority of the Bitcoin? I don't know. Is there something better we could do down the line? Are there different things, different cryptocurrencies that will eventually come along that solve this issue? It is what it is, right? At the end of the day, it still becomes a supply and demand issue. The only benefit to Bitcoin over the rest is that it's transparent, which is definitely going to help, I think. But even if it's transparent and one person owns a majority of it, then it still has the same problems that we have today. Only difference being, as opposed to it all being printed, it's dependent on how much you already control. Anyways, just some thoughts. Now, there's an interesting thing happening with, I think, the Lightning Network here. Well, we'll talk about that. First, let's talk about the Silk Road hacker who accidentally showed feds $70 million worth of Bitcoin on his laptop before being arrested. Police body cam footage shows the Silk Road hacker opening up a laptop with thousands of Bitcoin on it in front of federal investigators, not realizing he was incriminating himself. James Zong was charged by the U.S. government last year for stealing more than 50,000 Bitcoin from the illicit online marketplace Silk Road in 2012. It's kind of funny that you have basically somebody getting in trouble for stealing from people that were doing illegal activities in general. In 2019, after his house was broken into, Zong called the police to inform them, despite having mountains of incriminating evidence laying around in his home. Zong revealed over the phone that he was an investor in Bitcoin, putting himself on the radar of investigators. At the same time, the IRS Criminal Investigation Unit was painstakingly trying to solve the Silk Road hack of 2013, analyzing details of its on-chain paper trail. Ultimately, an investigator from the blockchain analytics firm Chain Analysis, who was hired by the government, noticed that an address associated with the Silk Road hacker accidentally performed KYC routine with a crypto exchange, revealing Zong's name and home address months after his 911 call. With help from Sean Magruder, there we go, CEO of a cyber intelligence company, Blocktrace, the IRS created a plan to enter Zong's home and talk to him under the auspices of investigating the break and enter that he had reported earlier. Once inside, Zong made the grave mistake of telling investigators he was a Bitcoin OG and that he had 1,500 Bitcoin sitting on one laptop alone, which he then proceeded to show investigators on camera. Says Magruder of Blocktrace, quote, lo and behold, he had 60 or $70 million worth of Bitcoins right there next to us. It was also revealed that Zong was one of the earliest contributors to the development of Bitcoin and routinely posted advice and suggestions on online forums for how to improve the Bitcoin protocol. Investigators returned the following day, still under the pretext that they were helping him, but instead executed a search warrant. Using a dog trained to find computer hardware, the agents found the wallets with the addresses to the 50,000 Bitcoin, once worth over $3 billion US, sitting in a safe buried in concrete underneath Zong's basement floor. Zong was sentenced to 1 year and 1 day in prison for his role in the Silk Road hacking incident. Absolutely insane. I don't even think I need to talk about, I don't have anything to say. I'm at a loss for words on this in general. Someone that apparently has like pretty high level intelligence as far as working on Bitcoin, being involved for that long, etc., you know, ends up in a position where he hacks Silk Road, which are bad guys in the first place, I suppose, and then stores that and then KYCs himself. It's just insanity. And it goes to show you that any of us can make these mistakes over and over again too. And I'm not saying that, you know, you should break the law, etc. And that is the reason why you should be careful with KYC, but you should be careful with KYC for a lot of other reasons. First of all, it's your right to privacy. You should maintain that, your sovereign right to basically maintain your own keys and etc. But, you know, at the end of the day, like, there are other things like going on here that you should pay attention to, essentially, is my point. And even the most intelligent of people that have been in Bitcoin for a long time make kind of silly mistakes. But it's crazy to me too that he was even participating within this in the first place. Doesn't seem like a very strong sentence. A year and a day doesn't seem that crazy. I'm sure there's some plea deals that are going on there, maybe some help to reveal, you know, more people that were utilizing Silk Road is what I would assume is going on here. I'd like to hear y'all's thoughts and opinions in the comment section below. Also, you can get around a lot of this by, like, frankly, memorizing your seed phrase and just destroying all the evidence. And there we go. Put on a list. It's okay. I've probably been on a list for a long time. That is not something that you should do to commit illegal activities, but to protect your cryptocurrency from potential hackers, etc. Okay. That dog must be an amazing dude too. Like, that dog smelled under concrete, bro, and then fucking pulled that shit out. That's amazing, man. All right. Bitcoin's Lightning Network faces storm as developer exits over security concerns. Now, Bitcoin Lightning Network has been, you know, a point of contention for a long time. Apparently, there's some security concerns surrounding this, so let's go ahead and take a look. In an unexpected twist, prominent Bitcoin developer Antoine Riard, I think I said that correctly, has made a shocking announcement revealing his departure from Lightning Network's development due to alarming security concerns. Riard's decision was prompted by his discovery of a new category of replacement cycling attacks that he believes pose a significant threat to Lightning Network's stability. After conducting thorough tests, he confirmed the network's vulnerability and stressed the need for a fundamental solution. He suggests that addressing these issues might necessitate a base layer fix involving memory-intensive transaction history or consensus upgrades. This departure has sent ripples of concern throughout the crypto community, highlighting the pressing need for a robust solution to safeguard Lightning Network, a critical component of Bitcoin's ecosystem. It also underscores the challenges developers face in ensuring the security and reliability of decentralized systems. His responsible disclosure process followed protocols similar to those used for addressing hardware issues in operating systems, adapted to the unique context of the Bitcoin ecosystem. He expressed the gravity of the situation, emphasizing that implementing such significant changes requires complete transparency and consensus within the community. With his stepping back from the Lightning development, uncertainties arise about the future of Bitcoin's second layer scalability options. The departure of such a key developer shifts the focus to a wider community, urging them to unite and tackle the security challenges posed to the Lightning Network. I am not too clear on exactly what the issues are at this point. Obviously, Lightning Network and this layer 2 system has been something that has been, I think, under a lot of stress for quite some time, but has also not been very widely adopted, right? If you look at the Lightning Network, the amount of transactions on them have gone down significantly over time for whatever reason. And it does appear that for the by and large, at least from what I can tell, people are still utilizing Bitcoin as a store of value, not so much as a transaction medium. Now, Lightning Network was supposed to be for the transaction medium part of this type of thing, but maybe a different cryptocurrency will solve this and take over for that part, whether it's Dogecoin, Kaspa, or whatever it may be, Litecoin, and maybe Bitcoin just remains a store of value, but it does sound like this is going to have to be resolved. I'd like to hear your thoughts and opinions, of course, in the comment section below, as well as, of course, down in the live chat. Now, here's the Silicon battle, and this definitely is relevant for cryptocurrency miners in general, is heating up, and it's heating up to the point to where now we are seeing the US government restricting shipments of RTX 4090s to China. Now, we've talked about in the past, of course, the AI level GPUs getting restricted for shipment to China, but this also brings up another big issue in the fact that a lot of the manufacturing for these particular GPUs are done in China. And so if you are trying to restrict the shipment of the product from the US to China, but then expecting Chinese companies to manufacture this equipment and ship them to the US, well, obviously we're in a pickle here. But it says these are too powerful to be shipped to China without a license. Under the terms of the latest export rules imposed by the US government, AMD, Intel, and Nvidia can no longer ship a number of their high-performance processors to China, and a number of other countries without an export license from the US Department of Commerce. In fact, the restrictions are so severe that shipments of Nvidia's 8102 processors are also restricted, which may have an impact on the supply of GeForce RTX 4090 graphics cards. Given the demand for NVIDIA's AI GPUs across the globe, the company does not expect its financial results in the near term to be affected by the new export rules. Meanwhile, it remains to be seen how these new export rules affect the production and prices of the RTX 4090 based graphics card, which are generally made in China. In a bid to comply with the new export rules, NVIDIA will have to initiate production of GeForce RTX 4090 and other 8102 based products outside of China. So it does sound like NVIDIA is also being required to move manufacturing outside of China too. This might bring everything to a head revolving around, the Chinese government and Taiwan, which would be really interesting if a lot of this moves into being headquartered in Taiwan, which apparently is the case if I read the next paragraph here. Transferring production to Taiwan is perhaps not a problem for the vast majority of brands, as the most of them are headquartered in Taiwan. There is one big exception though. Colorful, which is one of NVIDIA's major customers and which happens to be one of the world's largest graphics card manufacturers, only operates in China. But we have the other issue here. if we are talking about the contention of basically Taiwan being a country, remember them making John Cena basically apologize for calling Taiwan a country. I think that's what it was, plus a few others. Plus, remember, they banned that Hearthstone player for basically saying, you know, free Hong Kong, all this type of stuff where the Chinese government is basically trying to already lay claim to Taiwan. If you move production over there and you stop the shipment of the RTX cards to China, that's just going to make the Chinese government all that more basically incentivized to further kind of put a grasp over Taiwan. And with basically, you know, all these outbreaks in already with, you know, Ukraine and Russia, Israel, and then you add this on, man, this starts to look a little creepy in my humble opinion, because we're having basically, like I've said before, a silicon war with China, and they already consider Taiwan a part of China. So just moving the production to Taiwan, in my humble opinion, isn't going to solve any of this. In fact, it's going to make things worse, if you had to ask me. That being said, you know, Colorful is obviously already a huge operator in China. NVIDIA may attempt to supply as many 8102 GPUs to its partner as possible in the coming weeks, though it remains to be seen how this affects the supply of the RTX 4090 products in other countries. Starting from November 16 of 2023, NVIDIA will be unable to ship its A100, A800, H100, H800, L40 and 40S, and the 4090 cards and modules for AI and high-powered computing to China, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates, and Vietnam without an export license from the U.S. Department of Commerce's Bureau of Industry and Security. All of the aforementioned products, except for the 4090, are data center GPUs for AI and high-powered computing. The GeForce RTX 4090 is the best graphics card money can buy, assuming price isn't a limiting factor. But since the new restrictions curb exports of high-performance processors in general, it falls under the new regulations. Quote, the licensing requirement may impact the company's ability to complete developments of products in a timely manner, support existing customers of covered products, or supply customers of covered products outside the impacted regions, and may require the company to transition certain operations out of one or more of the identified countries, a statement by NVIDIA in its filing with the SEC reads. Now, in my humble opinion, like I've always stated before, HODL silicon, and I think this is going to be extremely relevant now with all of this going on. Shortages are already kind of happening because of AI. We haven't seen new GPU prices really drop that much outside of some outliers like the Intel Arc series. Pretty much on both the AMD side and the NVIDIA side, the high-end GPUs have extremely high price tags that are reminiscent of the previous two crypto bull runs. And we're in a bear market. And this is primarily due to the fact that we have the rise in AI. And once we start seeing these kind of limitations being put into place, manufacturing will be impacted, shipment will be impacted in general. And I think at the end of the day, I'm happy to hold all of my video cards and all of my silicon that I possibly can. It'll be interesting to see if this impacts, of course, the ASIC side of things as well. Really, ASICs have been the best inlet into cryptocurrency mining, I think, over the past year or so for accumulation purposes, because as opposed to GPUs that have only seen a slight drop in price really overall, we've seen basically ASICs drop 10x, right? They're a tenth of the price that they used to be. And that is why I've really shifted a lot of my investments over every other time in a cycle. I've just heavily invested in GPUs. But because of the kind of huge price swing, the cryptocurrency mining investment side of things from that perspective, the opportunity has been on the ASICs, not necessarily on the GPU side of things. I was hoping that I was going to see the GPU prices really start to take a dump and really be able to invest in like another 200 to 600 amps of GPUs before the next bull run. But I don't see that. I don't foresee that happening right now, especially with these things coming out more and more. I'd like to hear your thoughts and opinions, of course, in the comment section as well as the live stream. Let's go ahead and move on. If you guys are mining Dynex, it's going to be important to upgrade to SRB Miner version 2.3.9, which released this week. They fixed invalid shares for issues, or the invalid shares issues on Dynex, and performance improvements on Dynex for some GPUs, of course, and they reduced the dev fee for the algorithm Dynex to 2% because there's more competition coming into the market from I believe it's BZ Miner, by the way, which has just released Dynex support, but they're still struggling too. They added accepted, rejected compute error stats for GPUs in JSON API algorithms and some minor bug fixes overall. Now, I did want to point this out. A lot of people seem to really sit around and wait for HiveOS to implement the new miner, but you can always update those very simply. If you go to the GitHub for the miner that you're wanting to upgrade, like SRB Miner always gives you this script. And all you got to do is SSH into your machine and run this script and you'll be on the latest miner. You do not need to sit there and wait for HiveOS to update. HiveOS has been updating these quite a bit quicker than they used to, which has been good news. And that's because also part of the reason is less minor updates are really happening. All the minor updates do seem to be revolving around Dynex. I think that's a pretty good signal, by the way, too. I mean, if we look at not only that, but the Hivon statistics, if you guys are really wanting to look at what is going to be, I think, a big winner in the next bull run, you got to look at Dynex. You got 22% of all the mining GPUs on HiveOS mining Dynex right now. All of the miners are mostly updating because of changes and improvements to Dynex in general. And this is a huge deal. This is much larger than I think people have anticipated. I mean, 20% of the total GPU market being mined on a single algorithm or this single coin really means that we are seeing basically a new coin kind of rise out of the ashes, I think. Does that mean you should mine it now and hold? You know, pay attention to what you can handle as far as like your power bills and all that. I think from the outside investor perspective, Dynex is definitely going to be something you want to take a look at. If we are looking at like innovation from the perspective of proof of useful work being adopted, the price being pretty stable. Now we're going to have decentralized work distribution as they're getting rid of malab endpoints. And then we're going to have, you know, front ends for basically outside developers to rent these types of workloads. I think you're going to see a huge push on the Dynex side of things. And I think that it's undervalued right now. Of course, not financial advice. That's just my feeling as far as Dynex is concerned. Because as difficulty goes up, of course, the cost to mint Dynex will go up. And that, of course, will drive the price up. And that running into the bull run with everything else is going to be a deciding factor, I think. Now, if you guys were wanting to basically get more options for your profitability in mining, Rainbow Miner has released a new version. This is going to allow you to more easily switch between, obviously, the new Dynex algorithms and Dynex miners, which is going to be important. That is the big update here. And they've added BZ Miner version 17. If you're looking for AMD or for Intel support, we have a new miner with BZ Miner that supports Intel. I covered that earlier in the week. There's a new Intel GPU out as well that I just did a review on, the Intel Arc A580, which is essentially performance-wise on par with the A750 as far as Ergo is concerned, but it's under $200. You're getting 512 gigabytes a second of memory bandwidth for under $200, brand new, meaning you get the warranty for it. It's a pretty spanking good deal. And something that I've definitely been looking at from the GPU side of things, you know, even 5,700 XTs used, mined on, beat to death, they're selling for $125. You can spend like $50 more and you can get a comparable memory intensive algorithm GPU there. Now they don't perform as well on the ProgPal side of things, like I covered in the review, but go check that out. I think there's going to be some more development on this coming from BZ Miner as well, because I have been talking to the developer, and there's definitely more stuff coming down the pipeline for optimization for Intel. It's an interesting angle, but you got to be sitting there also remembering that here's the big problem with Intel: no FP64 support. Okay, so I want to make this very clear. Why is that relevant? Because that is required by Dynex. And if we are looking at kind of this 20% huge push in favor of Dynex moving into the next bull run, it's going to be important to make sure that you can mine Dynex. So maybe the Intel cards aren't that great. If you're bullish on Ergo, though, you probably want to look at the Intel cards. That's kind of my whole spiel surrounding all of that. Now, there was the release from BZ Miner version 17, which added the Intel support for Ironfish, Decred, Lithium, Radiant, Ruthenium, Chlor, XNA, Raven, Game Pass, Neoxa, Meowcoin, all of that cool stuff. And I think that's relevant. Of course, like I said, I haven't seen great performance on the ProgPal side of things. So performance on Chlor, XNA, Raven, Game Pass, Neoxa, and Meowcoin, not that great on these. But this is released, so you can go check that out. There was also support here for Decred that was added. Decred, I did an article over on sonofatech.locals.com, which you can check out and get up and mining Decred if you like. I also did a new article on how to mine Factorn, which is a new spec mine that you may want to check out as well. Because technically it is listed on ZegX, so not full spec mineable coin, but definitely an interesting project that has no pre-mine, fair launch, and is backed by Coinbase, which is really interesting. And it's going to be mining based on factoring, which is kind of its unique push and pull. Go check that out if you're interested. Now, Epic Blockchain, which builds control boards for Bitmain miners, has released a new firmware for their UMC boards, and they support S19s. And so I have actually gotten this installed now and have been testing it out. I did just change it up a little bit, but I did run it at its rated S19 95 terahash marking, just to kind of get it in and see if it kind of clocked it down. I'm playing with a lot of different settings here, but you can see here that I do have that pulled up. We were doing 36 joules per terahash, I think, which is basically rated at what it's going to be. Over the past 24 hours, it did 97.51 terahash a second. So it did overclock a little bit. It was kind of interesting to play with. We're going to see what its efficiency levels bring us to, but I'm pretty happy with the new Epic firmware for the S19s. Previously, I'd only been running them on S19 Pros, etc. But now with the S19, this is an enticing option, because not only do you get that auto tuning, but you get auto tuning without a developer fee. And all of the rest of these auto tune capabilities, whether you're talking about Luxor, HiveOS, Brains, any of that, all of those require a dev fee on top of you purchasing the board. Now, the perks to all the others that I aforementioned is technically a lot of the S19 miners already come with Z-Link's boards in them, and you can just flash those boards over. However, that's not always the case, and in some cases you have to buy the Z-Link's boards along with that, especially on the S19 Pro and S19J series. Those typically weren't coming with the Z-Link's boards. The S19 vanillas were. So you have to purchase boards on top of that and then pay the developer fee. Also, you have to flash the firmware. Whereas with Epic, it kind of comes in a package. You get the board, and then there's no fees after that. That will be a game changer the longer you run those cards. Still kicking a little bit of a cold, but I just wanted to bring this to your guys' attention, and it's out there. I do have the right now testing the HiveOS firmware on my S19s as well. I haven't been super happy with it. Their tuning process has been a nightmare. The flashing process was pretty simple as far as putting on a card. We'll cover that, you know, in another video. I have a couple of these running at essentially, you can go to the overclocking here. This is actually at 2400, which is interesting. Let me find one that's actually working. So that one's even got some invalid shares. This one's completely shut down. Let's see. I think this one's at no, this one's at 2400 too. This is kind of weird. I had set these different, but I don't know why they are. They're all set to 2400. Anyways, you can swing these down to 2000. I do not know what happened here, but 2400 will get you, I'll just show you guys. 2400 will get you this 2.163 kilowatts. So 2163 watts, and about 86 terahash a second on the S19 95 terahash. Ooh, excuse me. And on the 2000 watt setting, it'll get you about 1983 watts at about 77 terahash a second. Of course, if you wanted to calculate that in, we can do that over here. Yeah. So 77, 1983, you know, at 10 cents a kilowatt hour, 3 cents, 5 cents a day on, you know, best 8 cents a day on Ant Pool right now. If you get the 86, we can calculate that in as well. 2163. It's really about 87 terahash a second up there. It's going to be a little bit better. So for the Hive OS, like you can see here on Ant Pool, 27 cents a day for these. So it does appear, point being, and I think maybe that is why I made this change, the 2400 target value for the auto tune, and then you hit this max efficiency on the S19 95 terahash seem to be the best performing for me right now. So your mileage may vary. It will depend, like maybe your area is running a little bit cooler, all that sort of thing. You'll have to check all of it out, but that's kind of what I've been working on. I will be getting a video on all that done. So if you're interested, hit the sub button and all of that. We're going to be also comparing Brains OS, as well as Lux OS, all of them, and getting them flashed over, having like one on each and just kind of going through and playing with them. I also have, of course, a meter, a power meter that will run all those through. But you know, that's where we're at as far as that goes. So, my recommendation right now, if you are purchasing miners, getting used S19s most likely get you the Z-Links boards, which can get you closer to, which can get you all the way really realistically down to under or very close to 30 joules per terahash, which is very competitive. And you don't have to buy a board, and you can flash on whatever firmware you want, because most of those are coming with that. All the new like S19s, Pros, S19Js, S19 XPs, they're not coming with the Z-Links boards, which means you have to buy a board. If you're going to go that route, I really think if you're going to invest in a control board, investing in the Epic boards gets you that no developer fee and the same performance really across the board as far as the efficiency and auto tuning. So my strategy really has been that, like if I'm going to get the older ones, I think that's the best all in, because right now, if you're going with those S19 Pros, you're really in that $1,000 range. You do get a little bit better efficiency. You get way better efficiency out of the box, but really only a little bit better efficiency once you've modified the firmware. So that's kind of where I'm at as far as that's concerned. I'll be doing a whole video on that too. Looking at GPUs, I kind of, you know, haven't been mining with GPUs right now because I've still been testing to get all of these ASICs out and hosted. So basically I bring in 10 ASICs, I get them all set up, I get the firmware installed, I test everything, and then I ship those out to a hosting facility. And because I've been doing that lately, I haven't been mining with GPUs, but GPU market is looking better primarily due to the fact that we have dual mining going on with Radiant, right? And that's kind of really the key. The problem is if we go down to the GPUs that a lot of people have, if we go down to like the 3070, it still is at 10 cents a day. You're profitable right now. with dual mining, but also got to keep in mind when you're dual mining, it's frankly less guaranteed, I suppose you could say, or less reliable. And it's with Erg and Radiant right now on the 3070, which is the most popular. If we find a 5700 XT, I wonder where those are going to be, which I think are the highest. Well, the 580s I still think are a little bit of the highest, but let's see. 5700 XT, interestingly, showing Vertcoin is the highest profitability. What I've been doing with the 5700 XTs is just pointing it with ProgPal to basically Zerg pool and or Z pool, and utilizing Rainbow Miner and just letting it do whatever's most profitable on that. I think that Kai network coin is going to be interesting if merge mining really does end up being a thing with ProgPal. That's one that I have my eye out on. Of course, Voscoin covered it. I did cover the red flags on it, so you can get a good overview between watching Voscoin and then watching my video or my reaction to Voscoin on that, and get a very good idea of what that project is doing. Of course, that has a ton of VC backing, all that sort of stuff. The only interesting part, like I said, is that merge mining. So that's kind of, as far as that's concerned, that's what I've been looking at with GPUs is really, you know, what are you looking at with the dual mining right now? We're getting into winter. ProgPal is going to be, I think, a pretty good bet on like all the 5700s. I think we even saw Red Panda Mining picking up a bunch of 5700s. Me personally, I've been going the Intel route. I know that's controversial, but I think like 512 gigabytes a second, you know, of memory bandwidth for under $200 with a warranty still is better than, you know, $125 for a used 5700 that was, I mean, we all know the 5700 have been beat up mining, because that's pretty much the only thing people used 5700 XTs for was mining, right? And they frankly, they weren't really utilized for gaming near as much because they were just so far behind. At least that's my humble opinion. We already covered the hash rate index. The biggest winners, I think right now, is being this 38 to 68 joules per terahash range as far as price drops go. A couple of the big ones that are interesting are all the S19s that are still under that with that 34, but really coming in at like under $5 per terahash, which is pretty incredible right now. So those are what I've been keeping my eye on personally, not financial advice or anything like that. You can pick them up from Coastal Crypto Mining, I think, still as well. So go check them out. Links in the description. And I think they're still selling them for around that $5 per terahash mark. So if you're looking for a place to get them, and that's shipped. So pretty good pricing over there with them. Definitely go check that out. That's where I've been getting mine from. My S19 Pros, 104s and stuff, I've been getting through a different company, but you can go check that out. I just want to mention again, Kilowatt Killers. You can check it out in the shop below or at shop.sonofatech.com. Don't worry, we still have our Kaspa Millionaire shirts up there, as well as our Straight Out of Power and our Keep Calm Mine On shirts, and the classic I Bought Your GPU shirt at shop.sonofatech.com. Don't forget to check out my crypto mining e-course over at sonofatech.com. And yeah, Bitcoin was looking good over the past 7 days. And then I think on my watch list, the biggest gainers over the week, Meowcoin, Alephium, Radiant, AI, and of course Kaspa. Kaspa had broke the 5-cent mark, which is awesome. And then just crazy pump ups from Meowcoin going on. And we are even seeing, you know, of course, Ergo come up on that 7-day by 5%, which is pretty impressive. Getting back close to that dollar. I think over the past 24 hours, top three are Neura AI, Radiant, and Alephium. The problem with Radiant and Alephium is we still see a pretty bad distribution on their mining pools, especially Alephium. I think the block distribution's pretty bad. Yeah, Hero Miner's taking 60%. Or and 81% of the known hash rate and taking 60% of all the blocks. That needs to be distributed out better. A huge pump up in the actual hash rate on the network as well, which is pretty crazy. And then I think, like I said, I think Radiant's distribution wasn't that good either. Let's go double check. Yeah, 40% of the known hash rate. Obviously way better than Alephium at this point. And most of that's on Viper.net. I love the guys at Viper.net, but, you know, spread out the hash rate if you can. They're taking 40% of the blocks right now. 1 second. Let's get into questions and answers for the day. Remember, super chats are always appreciated, never required, first to be read because they're the easiest to read. Tagging at Son of a Tech will highlight the message orange and I'll be able to read it easier, thereby entering or making sure you get a better chance at me reading it. And let's go ahead and pop into it. So let me scroll up. I think the first one, just John English Tech. Let's see. Son of a rabid panda. Kudos to the dog who found the electronics in a safe under concrete. Yeah, that's pretty incredible. That story is hilarious. That's incredible that he was able to find that too. And then what did they do? Get a jackhammer in there and like jackhammer out the concrete? Like, that's crazy. Tommy T says, Ask Son of a Tech, what are your thoughts on Library and Odyssey news? Also interesting to see Library hash rate holding steady. Well, the hash rate's going to hold steady because it's ASIC, right? So this is the argument I think that we even had with like Shy. And I think there's a valid point to it being essentially that, and this is the benefits of a cryptocurrency going to ASICs. It means that anybody that bought the ASICs is essentially and can only mine that coin. So from a developer standpoint, it seems like, okay, well, at least I know what the security will be at all times. I think it does from the kaspa aspect. I think it's more important that they stay stable because there does seem to be like we've seen like some oddities with the transactions or the transaction timing because they're going so fast. But like in general, the actual hash rate staying the same on Library Coin is not surprising because what else are they going to mine, right? There's nothing else they can mine. If it was a GPU mineable coin, I think we would have seen the impact of that, right? So there you go. Now, Miner Boy says, Ask Son of a Tech, what do you think about Ethereum? Seems dead. So Ethereum's interesting because they're the first ones to implement Blake 3 with, of course, the ETH hash algorithm, which ended up being actually is going to be utilized by the LOL developer to a certain extent for modifying the new Ironfish algorithm. So you always have to look at things objectively. You don't need Ethereum to be Ethereum and be successful as Ethereum, but you needed Ethereum for the development of a better algorithm, right? So I think this has been the difficult part, I think, within cryptocurrency as a whole and why you shouldn't stay tied to any coin, because when you stay tied to a coin, you're just kind of hurting yourself. The development ended up actually pushing along further another project, which is the curious part and the interesting part about Ethereum. So Ethereum is important from that factor. Does that mean Ethereum itself will be successful? I don't fucking know. Does it matter? Not really, because we got out of it what we need. We got innovation and development out of that we needed, right? So there you go. Crypto KJ says, Ask Son of a Tech, opinion on Neura AI? I don't know. I really haven't paid attention to it too much, other than I know that it's another ProgPal mineable coin that added AI into the name to basically try to push up marketing and promotions. That's it, right? That's all I know about it right now. Georgie says, Ask Son of a Tech, what is your interest in art cards if there are AI based projects out there? What do you mean as far as art cards for, because AI based projects are what? Right? The only downside to ARC cards right now is that they don't have FP64 support, which really has nothing to do with AI at this point, right? That's a solver that is specific to Dynex for what they're doing, right? Holger says, that's Ametech. When will BZ miners support Dynex? They already do support Dynex. Matt K says, that's Ametech. The Ironfish devs checked out ETH B3 and said the B3 implementation was sloppy, which was part of the reason they didn't want to use it. Yeah, and I covered that in my video, but it was still done first, right? So when you are... People will talk shit to talk shit, first of all. And it wasn't the Ironfish dev. It was the LOL miner dev that checked it out first and said it was sloppy. So it wasn't Ironfish devs. The Ironfish devs don't actually seem to be the ones pushing along the algorithm change either, nor are they the ones that are primarily developing that, right? So they're getting help from a third party in that particular case. And that's where that came from. But it had to be done first to spark that idea, right? So... it's like anything else. That's still a stepping stone into something better. So it's relevant from that perspective. That's the only point of my little rant earlier. Miner for 9 says, that's Ametech. Do you still have a Space Mesh node? No, I really don't like Space Mesh. I think it's too complicated. It's a waste of hard drive space. And I don't know. It seems like it needs a lot of work before I think it can really be utilized, I think, to a better... it's just another Chia. That's really what I'm getting from it, personally. I don't see the point in a time where it's still the same problem. Where in a time where really, like... we need more data. We need more space. Like big data is a big deal, especially with AI on the forefront. Just utilizing basically hard drive space as a bingo card just doesn't make sense to me. It just, I don't know. It's kind of odd. That's my personal opinion. If it was like space that I could utilize, I don't know. Split, maybe it makes more sense. Crypto KJ says, as Ametech, I enjoyed our back and forth about Trade Ogre. What is your thoughts about them with their kaspa wallet? I mean, I think it's manipulation. It does appear that it's arbitrage that they're utilizing and leveraging. Keep the price low on Trade Ogre so that they can buy it and then ship it over to another exchange where it's worth more and sell it off. I mean, it appears to be what's going on. It's hard to prove that though, right? I think that's going to call it for me today, guys. Thanks for watching. Hit the like, comment, subscribe, and notification bells down below. Don't forget to check out sonavatech.com for my crypto mining e-course. You can get a free month of Sonavatech as a supporter at sonavatech.locals.com with a purchase of that e-course, which I post all my daily moves on, all that sort of stuff. Great community over there. Definitely check it out. And don't forget, Kilowatt Killers t-shirt down below. Check it out if you want to support the channel. Those are some ways you can do it other than hitting the like and the subscribe button. We are almost done with the last set of sponsorship ad rolls from BT miners, and I will not be running any ads anymore on the channel. The YouTube channel makes no money anymore. I could do sponsorship ads and keep filling them up, but then I'll just end up like every other cryptocurrency YouTuber that is severely compromised, and I just don't want to do that. So I'm focused on mining where I actually make money, and my day job where I actually make money. And the YouTube channel is just here to help you guys. And that's it. Fuck everyone else. I'll see you guys next Tuesday.